Because they give you, I think, 3,700 is what you got. Okay, but like 3K, you can still save a bunch if you find like cheap helmet.
Hello, people on YouTube. Can you guys hear me? Wait, this is not the correct mic. 1 second. Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? How's the sound on this now, guys? Is it too loud? Is it okay for folks on the stream?
It's crazy, right? Yeah. He did that last week too, apparently.
Oh, really? Was you in last week?
Hello, hello. Can you guys hear this?
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know. Okay, it sounds like the live stream is working. Awesome. So for the folks on YouTube, what we'll be doing is I'll basically share my screen on this with the question that we're answering. And the panelists also have their own mic as well. So let me know at any time if there's some issues with the sound, and I can kind of address those as we go. Cool. So if you haven't already, here is the Slido with the questions. If you haven't seen them yet, we'll be going through these questions sort of from the most popular to the least popular. So get your questions in, upload any that you find interesting. Okay. Oh wait, hold on. I need to let me open this up as well, and then we'll get started shortly. Give me 2 minutes, guys. Upload any that you find interesting. Okay. Oh wait, hold on. I need to.
So you're taking this one? Oh, nice. What are those?
You?
3:30 as well.
Did you write them?
Yeah, it's pretty sure.
Pretty sure.
Did you write it already?
I think tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. I don't like the it's just like the.
Oh yeah. Okay. I learned nothing.
No, I've learned nothing. But it's like I think it's like open book. Like there's no code.
Every homework I just copied their code.
Me too. Exactly.
Am I
And like
learning anything?
no, I actually didn't.
This is the
Y'all ready to master public speaking?
All right, panelists, do you guys mind maybe saying a few words into the mic, see how it sounds on the stream here?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, you can go for it, Benny.
yeah. Hello.
Testing.
All right, panelists, do you guys mind? Perfect. That sounds crisp. So I think we're all set up now. All right. So we have something like 60 people on the stream, which is a pretty good number. And then a bunch of us are in person. I know it's a bit of a busy time at UBC, so thank you guys for coming out. And of course, thank you to the panelists for being here. We're going to get started now. Let me share my screen for the questions. Okay, so now YouTube can see the questions and you guys can see the questions. I will keep an eye on the chat in case there's any issues. You guys obviously let me know if there's things that maybe I have some random tab open that I shouldn't be showing. Let me know if that happens. But yeah, I guess to get started, hello everyone. My name's Eric. I'm with Tech Career North. I was once in you guys' seat as well, studying computer science at UBC. Not that long ago, I graduated in 2022. So, or sorry, 2023. So yeah, been a couple of years since I've been out of school, but now I work at a company called HubSpot, based out of Washington State. I work from home. So I drove up here to hang out with you guys today. But you guys aren't here for me. You're here for our wonderful panelists in front of you. We have with us first Carolyn. Yeah, for folks who don't know, Carolyn is a current student at UBC. I think you're almost graduating. Yes, last semester, I think. So congratulations. But yeah, Carolyn is incoming software engineer at Jane Street. She's also interned at a few other places like Databricks and Splunk as well. So she's made some time to be with us today, which we're very excited about. Benny is with us as well today. He is an incoming intern at Meta. He is a BCS student, like I was. So shout out to all the BCS folks in the chat and maybe here as well. And then finally, we have Ario, who is he's incoming at Google, right, in Mountain View this summer. But he also interned at Google last year. Was it last year?
Yeah, it was last year.
Yeah, last year as a step intern. So maybe for more early career or kind of like freshman, underclassmen folks, he's got a lot of insights as well. Okay, so let's dive straight into the questions. And like I said, we'll kind of like go through this from the most popular question to the least. I'll also keep an eye on the chat. I am keeping an eye on the chat in case there's any other maybe follow-ups or questions. But otherwise, yeah, make sure you upvote these because we will be going through them from most popular to least popular, and we may or may not get through all of them. So, yeah, I guess to get started with the first question. So this anonymous asks, I think, can I do this? No, you guys can't see this on here, but basically, yeah, the first question is, have any of you worked on personal projects that you would consider S tier, meaning they have a solid user base, generate revenue, or are extremely technical? Anyone have anything they want to talk about there? Yeah, Ario, go for it.
So it's not a project I did by myself, but a project I was onboarded to is essentially yet another job board for posting job postings for internships and new grad. If all are interested, it's called Curve. Check it out. It's awesome. So when working on a project, I guess here's something to keep in mind is you may start working on it for the purposes of like padding your resume with like, oh, this project has very high impact. Companies will see it and be like, yo, let's hire this guy. The issue with that is first, it's relatively rare to make what is, I guess you would define as an S tier personal project by yourself. And the second thing is if you get into a project solely for the purposes of putting it on a resume, I find that it often takes away from the valuable learning experience that comes with doing your personal project. So I would say if you want to work on something S tier, do it for the amazing learning experience that it is rather than trying to set it as something on a resume.
So to provide a counterexample, I have not worked on personal project I would consider S tier. I think that the importance of projects in general is kind of overstated among just people in general in software engineering. Because for projects, they're really only useful, A, for learning, and then B, in terms of actually passing the interview loop. I think that a good personal project, it's very rare that it will actually help you pass that resume screen. And then unless it helps you pass, there's like very diminishing marginal returns on having a project and spending your time on projects. For me, I just decided that the time spent on projects would be better used to kind of prep my interview skills. So I kind of focused on those. And personally, it worked out for me, but obviously everyone has different opinions on this.
Yeah, I didn't have a project either. I don't even have any projects on my resume because I have like enough internships by now. Yeah, nothing to add.
I think to add to Carolyn's point, I would say you should only work on a personal project if one, it furthers a skill you want to develop. Two, it demonstrates a skill on your resume that a job otherwise wouldn't demonstrate. Or three, you don't have any internships to begin with, and stuff like projects is really the only way to show your skills.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for those insights. That was by far the most popular question. So hopefully that there's some good insights there for folks who are curious. So I'll mark that answered. Next question. This is for Ario. We can be fairly quick about this, I think. But how many ChatGPT did you use to break into Google?
So I may actually know who
means.
wrote this question, but I digress. I did not use ChatGPT at all to write the resume that first got me into Google. I haven't used it to write my resume seriously ever since. I honestly wouldn't recommend it to come up with original content. Maybe if you're like trying to correct for grammatical stuff or trying to expand on a point, but I'd say that's about it. Because like if you just ChatGPT your entire resume, recruiters can tell. Like it seems kind of lazy to do that. So I didn't use ChatGPT for the interview or any other LLMs. I wouldn't recommend using it to cheat in interviews. either for obvious reasons. So
Awesome. Yeah, I guess to put a spin on that question, then, is there any part of sort of your flow, whether it's like applying to internships or maybe study prep or any part of like the application process where you guys do use AI or would recommend using AI?
I don't think so. Like with respect to applying to things, I would only really use ChatGPT to get like an introduction if I have like absolutely zero ideas. I wouldn't trust it at all to give factual information for literally anything because it keeps hallucinating information. So I would say use it really only if you want to reformat things, maybe explain things better. And obviously, don't treat it as the final thing you go to. Always clear it up with ideally someone who's experienced in the field so that they can get a second look at it.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like for summer, I only applied to like 15 jobs. So like, I'm not gonna use ChatGPT for those. I'm gonna like look carefully for each one. So yeah, I look at everything myself.
Yeah, I only use ChatGPT for explaining things. Specifically to avoid hallucinations, I normally try to give it a solution or explanation that is kind of too complex for me to understand. And I ask it to dumb it down to like a 5-year-old level, and then slowly from there add in more detail. And for that helps for explanations. But other than that, I don't tend to use it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that response. Thank you for that question. To be honest, I didn't know what it meant exactly when I first saw it. So hopefully that's what you were asking, or maybe you were just memeing, which was fine as well. But yeah, it's just to give an update. Our live stream is looking good. Thank you for folks who are, who are engaging. It looks, we have like almost 70 people, and everyone says the audio quality is great. So these mics are working. Next question. As someone who graduated with a CS degree with little or no co-op experience, what is the most realistic way to secure a new grad job? This is a good one.
Yeah, so I guess to answer this question, I think that realistically, the easiest time to break into a lot of companies is the new grad position. So if possible, I would look at how to extend your degree. Is it possible to kind of do a master's degree? Is it possible to kind of slow down the courses you're taking so you kind of extend by a term? Because when you kind of have that gap in your resume after you graduate, and then there's that year where you don't have a job and you're trying to still apply for new grad positions, it can kind of be tough because I think a lot of recruiters will kind of see that gap and think of it a little suspiciously. So number one, if possible, try to extend. If that really isn't possible, and if that really isn't the case, I mean, I think the only solution is really just mass applying and being fixed. Obviously, there's a lot of open source stuff. So if you haven't gotten into open source or other types of projects, that would be something to look into. Other places will do internships, even for people who haven't graduated yet, or already graduated. So that might be another option, and try to kind of swing one of those internships into a new grad position. But yeah, primarily I would say try to extend your degree, and if those don't work, try to do those follow-up options.
Yeah, 100% agree with Carolyn. I would add that the intern and new grad market is a numbers game, pretty much. Like, at a certain point, it comes down to how many applications you can spam on a given day or a given week. I would also strongly recommend trying to network with people because, like, just spamming apply on LinkedIn isn't going to yield too much success unless you have absolutely insane personal projects and or have like one internship that's really, really good. So I would say if you can't delay grad to get an internship or another new grad position, mass apply as much as you can, network, try to expand your resume with personal projects or even work you can do within your school, because that's the first job I got and it's helped me immensely ever since. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for those responses. I guess we'll go to the next question. I did figure out a way to present this better on the YouTube, so hopefully that helps. The next question is another good one. What key preparations should you make for quant interviews besides code grind, and what are the best resources for them? I guess we can start with Carolyn for this one.
Yeah, so I think that for all interviews, not just quant, you can kind of separate it into two different steps. There's a step where you actually try to get the interview, and there's a steps that you take in order to pass the interview. And so the steps that you should get in order to get the interview is kind of, in my opinion, the hardest part. So it depends on what position you want. For me, I was applying for mostly quant dev or software engineering positions, but it is a bit different for different positions. So kind of like keep in mind that my advice is kind of tailored towards the quant dev market. For quant interviews in particular, I think a lot of firms are looking for either like a really good school or good previous experience. So for me, that means like for me, I think preferably that means a paying company or like a unicorn or some other company that is kind of considered a good company to internet. Though it's obviously not 100% required. And then in terms of actually passing the interview stage, I think that besides lead code grind, there's companies that kind of do more lead code or more code heavy interviews, and then there's other companies that tend to do more systems based interviews. So it really depends on what you're kind of gunning for. But if you want to kind of just shoot for everything, yeah, lead code obviously, and then just practice your systems and OS stuff. Make sure that you know that down pat. Preferably in C++, but if you don't know C++, I think Python is a good second option.
Awesome. Yeah, amazing insight. I didn't know a lot of that, so that's pretty cool to learn myself. Next question. This comes from Anonymous. I think all of them are from Anonymous. Yeah, so the question is, how do you avoid getting pigeonholed into work you're not interested in? I've done 2 full stack internships and want to try backend/infra for my next one.
So realistically, the best way I would think is first try to do projects in the area that you want to pivot to. So you mentioned backend/infra, do backend and infra project and really go deep into the tech that you used plus the specific trade-offs that you made. The primary issue with trying to pivot is they see that you had 2 previous internships and were like, yo, he's already done 2 full stack internships. Let's hire him for another full stack role. So I acknowledge it is going to be an uphill battle to a degree, but it is possible, especially since having experience is going to put you a step up. The people who are just trying to break into their first internship to begin with in backend/end. Like, don't underestimate how much having even just 2 internships can do your resume.
Yeah, and also I guess like all my internships were like full stack, but like nothing's really stopping you from like working at the infra team, right? Like if you're interested, like while you're interning, just find the infra guy and be like, hey, like, can I learn something about the company? Like that's what I did. The code base is wide open, right? So the more you know, like for next one, and like for Fang, for example, like for Meta, like they'll team match you based on like what you're interested. So that's, I guess that's another thing, right? If you get matched to a company that like allows that flexibility. Yeah, that's kind of my 2.
Yeah, I would just add to that. So with your current full stack internship experiences, I would just try to really emphasize the back end part and try to minimize the front end part. So make your resume more back end heavy. And then in terms of actually after like you get actual jobs, I would try to like talk to your recruiter, see if you can ask them, just say that you're only interested in backend and infra, especially if you have leverage. I think a lot of times they're willing to work with you and willing to switch your team even if you have that leverage. So yeah, just ask your recruiter. And as Bunny and other people have mentioned, just kind of, yeah, when you're in your internship, just try to ask as many people as possible.
Cool. Next question. This one is, we'll spend not too much time on this one, I guess. Whoops. Okay, I actually did not mean to skip that. But the question was, are software engineers cooked? Which, like, I'll go ahead and answer and say that you guys are in a rough market, but I think we're fine. Oh, it's back. Are we software engineers cooked? Yeah, I don't know exactly what folks are getting at. It is a harder market, but your peers are in front of you right now, having had great success in this market. So I would say it's still definitely possible to get an amazing job as a as a software engineer coming out of either as an intern or coming out of university. So, this is another question from Anonymous. How do you get an interview at these big companies in the first place? That's kind of I guess anyone can answer this one because you've gotten an interview at these big companies. So
I think the short answer is that you have to plan. Like you can't say like, hey, like I want to go work for Google like in May and it's like March. Like for me, like I plan this like years in advance. Like also just kind of like think backwards, right? Like so like assume you get into Google, like what should I do, right? So either I get one through referral or I do a non-referral. Obviously that's an easier route is through referral. So then if you wanted to get a referral, you should go meet people, right? So that's another step you would do. So I think you should like think backwards. Just think like, and then like obviously like with like some of these fan companies like code, we can't get away with it. So like I think you should, you know, maybe the cycle before because they usually recruit like a year in advance. So like maybe a year before start lead coding. That way, like when you actually get the chance, ready. Like for me, like all my applications came from referrals. Um, so and once like the interviews came, I was ready. But like it didn't happen, you know, overnight. Guess that's my answer.
Something else to acknowledge is that getting an interview at a big tech company is in general going to have a lot of pressure to it. Like there are people who I would consider way more qualified than me who have not gotten interviews for big tech despite applying. So ultimately, I would say try not to put all your eggs in one basket in the sense that you only want it done for one specific big tech company because it's very unlikely, even if you're very qualified, that you're going to get it. Try and apply to as many big tech companies as possible, as well as other companies. Having a previous internship definitely helps in the sense that you can demonstrate more concrete skills that they're looking for. So,
thank you for that. I'm gonna actually go to a different question because I saw on the bottom Kat asks, and I'm going to Kat because he or she, I guess, is actually not was brave enough to put their name on the question. So I will go to them with this question. And I think it's a good one too. So Kat asks, how confident are panelists in passing interviews at big tech, considering their experience? There may be a misconception that they will pass every interview.
I can't name how many interviews I've failed. Like, what's the question? It's like how confident? Yeah, like I just say like people always talk about like all the offers they've gotten. I think just in general, I think maybe I can't speak for these two, but like for me, I failed way more interviews than I've ever like passed. But like every one of those failed interviews were a good learning experience, right? Like OpenAI was my first interview this summer. Like clearly I wasn't good enough, right? But I learned so much from that, so that like when the other one came around, it helped me a lot. So,
yeah, for passing interviews at big tech, I'd say for the most part, I could put a decent effort. Though the thing to realize is the difficulty for a big tech interview, even at the same company, varies wildly depending on what question you get, what kind of interviewer you get, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say once again, try not to put all your eggs into one basket with one specific tech company. Apply to as many as you can. For bid tech, like leak code, I would encourage you to find mock interviews that you can do. There's people in TCN that are willing to do mock interviews. I would also encourage you to reach out to people in your school's Discord and ask them for mock interviews. That's how I got my mock interview for STEP with an awesome guy named Ethan, and it honestly was a really good insight into how the interview process works. So definitely recommend mocks, especially if you haven't done an interview before and you have one coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fairly confident that I would pass the interview given a large enough sample size, with the focus being the large enough sample size part. As other people have kind of touched on before, it's very luck-based. Like it's you can't kind of control what interviewer you get. A lot of it is dependent on their mood and what question they're trained in. So obviously you won't do well in every interview. The focus is on just preparing the best you can, and you can't control everything else. So yeah, in order to summarize that, I would just say that I'm fairly confident that I would pass the interview given a large enough sample size.
Awesome. All right, thank you, panelists, for that answer. I will say we have a lot of questions, but they're kind of all distributed in terms of upvotes evenly. I know there's like 70 to 80 people on the stream. If you guys have any specific questions that you want to upvote as well, of course, folks live, definitely now's the time to do it because there's a lot of questions. I don't think we'll get through all of them, but maybe we can find ones that are more important for folks. Let's see here. Can I refresh this? I think we saw that one already. 1 second. Okay, this next one. What are your thoughts on quant dev versus SWE and big tech? For Carolyn, why Jane Street compared to other big tech companies?
Yeah. So my decision to choose Jane Street, it was tough. I had a lot of really good offers from a lot of different companies I would love to work at. And I think that the reason why I ultimately chose Jane Street was after my internship over there last summer, I just really enjoyed my experience. I thought that there's a kind of stereotype or misconception around quant dev and quant in general that everyone is just this like mega brainiac with a huge ego, which I found was not true at all. I thought that everyone there was way smarter than I was, but everyone was incredibly humble and everyone is super, super easy to talk to. So in that sense, I think that it was just a really good experience. Green Street in particular cares a lot about training. They invest a lot in their interns. We had some really cool opportunities. Like for example, I traveled to the Hong Kong office for a week, which was super, super cool. Not a lot of places would have done that. And they just really invest in their interns in the grad experience, which is why I also decided to choose to go back. In terms of quant versus big tech, I think that in general, like quant tends to have higher pay, especially at the beginning. And then I would also kind of add an addendum that there's this other kind of thought that people tend to have of like, maybe I should start at big tech first and then go to quant after. But the problem with that is that a lot of times quant experience is like very specific quant experience. And you don't want to be shoehorned in either like quant or big tech. And after a certain point, it's no longer worth it to switch from one track to kind of the other track because your experience, like you no longer have the relevant experience to the other side, right? So for me, like a large part of it was thinking 10 years in the future, and I think I would be happier down a more quant route than a big tech route, which is also why I decided to go quant.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for that question. Next question here. And by the way, I see a bunch of questions on the YouTube chat. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to keep track of every question. So if you do have a question, please post them on the Slido and try to upvote them and get it to the top, I guess, so that we can see them. We'll try to answer these maybe afterwards if we have time, if the panelists are willing, but no promises on that. Next question. How many interviews per application were you guys getting? Do you have any tips on getting better at writing a resume? It's a good question.
For the summer, like I think on TCN, I think it was like 15-ish applications, 6 interviews. But I'm very specific, like I said. I only do target company. I've done 3 internships by that. So I only nailed down to like a list of companies I really wanted. And I have referrals for 80 to 90%. So I apply like very first hour or so. I kind of knew that I was going to get like a decent amount, but it's still pretty good.
That's very good.
So, interestingly, STEP is the only interview I got last year, which is wild to say. I would say like something for writing a good resume is like go to some of the blogs and articles that the recruiters for those companies themselves write. They give a lot of helpful advice for trying to like optimize your resume so that when a recruiter sees it, they can see, oh, this person knows X, Y, and Z and has done X, Y, and Z. I would also recommend you to get your resume reviewed as much as possible by people with industry experience. The insight they've given me into turning my resume from a borderline shit show to something that is palatable has been absolutely invaluable. So, TLDR, get your resume reviewed, read blogs from recruiters, and get through it.
Oh, I also just want to add, if you just search up a random like Waterloo person, and some of them like might have their resume, try to like tailor it to them. I feel like they have a pretty good resume example. So that's kind of what I did, I guess, to build my resume.
Yeah, so in terms of how many interviews per application, at the very beginning, like my very first cycle, I would say that I maybe got 1.5 interviews for every 100, which is not a lot. I definitely shotgunned a lot of places that year. And then this past cycle, I maybe got like 1 interview for every 2 companies. It was really high, maybe even more than that. But that was after I had a lot of previous experience. In terms of tips on getting better, yeah, just what everyone else said, basically just follow other people. People know the way. So
Yeah, and also like I hope we don't scare you, right? Like we didn't. It wasn't like 16, 15 like first time, right? Like the first time I applied, it was like I think it was like 150 before IBM gave me a shot, right? So please like don't compare against us. Like it's a process. Like if you're in first year, don't freak out that like you didn't get 1 interview every 2 applications. It all takes time.
Yeah, thanks for grounding us there. I do agree. It is, especially in the beginning, it's kind of like you just need that one shot, get your foot in the door, and then kind of build from there. Definitely don't expect to get, I don't know, all of Meta, Google, and Jane Street in your first, just from watching this video. I mean, it'd be amazing if that happens, but no promise that'll happen. But thank you for that question. Let me refresh because every once in a while this set here. Answered that one. Okay. Here's another one. What would be your best advice for someone trying to get a US internship, big tech, or startup? Things like timelines, interview prep, etc. I think we kind of answered maybe something.
The biggest thing to keep in mind is the vast majority of companies are not willing to put in the money and effort to sponsor someone for either a J1 or an H1B. The TN visa is kind of a different story because it's a lot less RNG to get than the other two. Though that only works if you are a current Canadian citizen and are a new grad, so keep that in mind. Big tech is a lot more lenient with sponsoring. Like, as far as I know, whether or not you need sponsorship doesn't really play a role in whether you get the interview or not. I can't speak to things like Quant or unicorns, but the unicorns, especially since they're startups, I would probably guess it's the same as startup, unless they're decently massive.
yeah, I would agree. Like I think a lot of startups are willing to sponsor if they're big enough, which kind of emphasis on the big enough part, as Ario kind of mentioned. If they're a unicorn or like bigger, then they tend to have sponsorship. But yeah, there's only a limited number of companies that are willing to sponsor. So
Oh, and don't forget to be a full-time student a semester before,
Uh-huh.
or else you'll get your J1 denied. And then I guess for timelines, they usually start like I think September or something in May, so like 8-ish months ahead. And then interview prep, like for Fangs, I stay probably exclusively lead code. Like Meta has a notorious, like you can search up like Meta tagged, just do the first 100. You should be okay for the most part.
Yeah, Benny brings up a good point about being a full-time student. or I guess like keeping in mind the J1 visa, which is probably what everyone other like except with a few, one or maybe a few companies as the exception, that is the visa that you would be getting for like a U.S. internship. And if you've been on the server, there have been people even recently that lost their U.S. internship because they didn't realize they didn't have the correct status to be able to get that visa. It's not a trivial thing, so you have to actually be very mindful of that when you're thinking, even before applying to U.S. internships, if you're kind of wanting to do a U.S. internship. I will plug the visa and immigration channel on TCN on the server. We'll get you more insights on that. But that's a really good question, so thank you for that. I like this next one as well. How did you find your mentor, if you have any? You don't have to say me, but
I found them through hackathon. So the first mentor I found, like he graded my project and like he said a bunch of technical stuff. I'm like, oh, this guy's interesting. Like, let me go talk to him. And then he ended up giving me a referral to Meta, and that's kind of how I got that one. Second one was with Leo. I think you guys know him from TCN. He's pretty active. Great guy. Again, like he was mentoring a hackathon. I was mentoring, and then I like heard about his story. I'm like, oh wow, this guy's cool. Let me go talk to him. So like I didn't really make an effort, I guess, to like find mentor. It's just more like, hey, like I like this guy. I think he's interesting. And then the more we talk, like we just gradually like became my mentor, I guess.
Oh, I think mine is different. I didn't really have a mentor, to be honest. I think that a lot of times, like, new grads are like, oh, I'm kind of a special case. But no, if you have a question, chances are a lot of other people have had the same question. So my knowledge was almost exclusively based on searching old Discord chats, which is actually pretty effective. So it is a time sink, so don't waste too much time on it, because I think the old principle that like 20% of the time gets 80% of the way there is definitely true. So yeah, I think a lot of information you could just find online already. Yeah.
So the way I found my mentor was really unexpected. When I wanted to get mock interviews for STEP in like January of last year, I like spammed my school's co-op and internship server and I was like, hey, mock interview, please. And also my school server being like, please mock interview me. I got 2 mock interviews. One was from a Googler himself. Another was from this awesome guy named Aiden. He roasted my interview skills and was like, you got this. I believe in you. He helped me really get a sense of like what it's like to do an interview, because again, I had never done a leak code interview with another person up to that point. So, and he's now one of my great friends. So I would 100% recommend, I would agree with these guys in the sense that you don't really find your mentors. It's more that your mentors find you, if that makes sense. Where like, obviously you can reach out to people and explicitly ask, hey, do you want to be my mentor? But oftentimes mentoring comes from you sharing a specific interest or them being already in a position above you, and it just the relationship naturally forms from you two solving a problem together. So networking, I would absolutely recommend. Reach out to people for mock interviews and reach out to the people even at the company you're at if you're doing an internship. Like, there's so many different ways you can reach out to other people for help, even if it's not long-term relationship that a mentor can turn into. So yeah.
awesome. Yeah, thank you for those insights. All very unique, I would say, in terms of the answers for this. Well, we're definitely somehow the number of questions are going up. So we're about halfway through. So thanks for bearing with us. Hopefully the panelists aren't too maybe parched or tired yet, but we'll keep chugging through. The next question. This is for Ario specifically. It looks like it's related to AI ML. For Ario, do you plan to continue in the AI machine learning field? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, and what skills are essential for AI ML compared to general SWE?
So for the first one, I would say maybe. Like, for me, it's not like I started getting into ML about early 2023-ish, and started just grinding out things like what sorts of math is needed for ML, like what sorts of software engineering skills, in particular to machine learning, that you don't usually see in something like a front-end or back-end project. So I would say that for me currently, I'm more so interested generally in whatever problem is interesting. For now, for me, that happens to be a lot of stuff in AI ML. But if something came along that was really interesting in like OS networking, then I'd be open to that as well. For where I see myself in 5 years, it's really hard to say. Ideally, like mid-level or senior at a great company that's doing amazing work, maybe even making my own startup, who knows. What skills are essential for AI ML? It really depends on if you want to do research or dev. For research, a strong a strong understanding of things like calc, linear algebra, statistics is basically a must. Like, you need to know your fundamentals very well because that's what they're going to ask in interviews, and that's what's going to be applied heavily on the job. I didn't do that myself. I would also encourage you to talk to people who are currently researchers in the field. They can provide a lot more in-depth insight. For development, a lot of these same skills from software engineering do come into play. I would also look into things like deploying models into production, as well as doing model monitoring, stuff like monitoring the model's accuracy or seeing how well it performs, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess next question, also kind of related to AI, but whoops, I did not mean to skip that one. Perfect. This was for Anonymous. What do you guys think of the future of software engineering in the age of AI? Do you think we will be replaced, etc.? Spicy question. Do you guys have any thoughts? I mean, we are all students here, of course, so maybe not, who knows, but yeah, if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I've actually like ChatGPT or whatever, like they've never solved any of my internship tickets. So I say probably no at this point, but who knows? I don't know.
I mean, I think that you're always going to need good software engineers. AI just makes good software engineers great software engineers in that they are a lot more productive. So maybe in terms of the actual number of software engineers, maybe that will dwindle. That's just a guess that I'm making, but I don't think we'll be fully replaced anytime soon. At least I'm not worried.
Yeah, so as someone who has prompted a lot of LLMs, I can tell you if you try and do anything that is non-trivial, it is annoying and frustrating to do because they keep making dumb mistakes. Like, the problem with AI is it's really only good at solved problems, and even then, it's really restricted in what it can do within those solved problems. So I would say we're definitely not going to get entirely replaced by AI, because there's a lot of other stuff that goes into software engineering as well. I do think that the job market is going to change from AI in the sense that software engineers are going to get a giant force multiplier from this effectively text parrot that can output a lot of good code for very specific tasks. So while I think it is going to change, I would not worry about software engineering dying anytime soon, like maybe within like the next 10 years.
There you have it. We know the exact future of AI. So thank you, panelists. No, but for real, I would agree with the sentiment. Who knows? Maybe it'll get better. I personally have like nowadays an entire screen just to run like cursor agents for my work, and usually it's like pretty bad. But it is kind of like an additional thing that's working in the background while I do my real kind of focused work. So maybe some things there that could potentially get better and better. So I would encourage folks to keep like using these, assume it'll get better because it probably will. But I don't think it'll replace us anytime soon. Anyways, I shouldn't talk too much about the panelists. But for Benny, could you share how a STEM degree differs now because of the abundance of information in communities like TCN? How much have you benefited from?
Yeah, no, definitely a lot. I think like a lot of my interviews came from referrals. So definitely knowing people. TCN is a huge part of that. And just I think it does help a lot, like knowing what you're going into, right? Like the worst thing would be like going to an interview that you had no idea what they're gonna ask you. So yeah, in that regard. So yeah, I think it's benefited me a lot.
Awesome. Nice and quick. Thank you for that. I believe we've answered this, or maybe we've answered a similar question, but if the panelists have any other thoughts to what is the best way to get an internship without prior relevant experience? Nope. Mario looks like he's okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'd echo all the stuff, all the advice I gave for the new grad portion. Like, network with as many people as you can. Spam apply because it's ultimately largely a numbers game and very luck based. Get people to review your resume so that you can optimize the bullet points in your projects as much as possible. Yeah, I don't have anything more specific than that.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think a good way is just to get prior experience that is not an internship. Like, I know it sounds kind of like, yeah, but I think that there's a lot of things out there, like school projects, for example, or school clubs that might offer kind of quasi internships in that you're maybe working on a project with a team and you have a kind of client in mind and you have a product that you're supposed to be working on. And that is kind of almost like the quasi internship that you can write on your resume in an internship like fashion. So kind of getting experiences like that is really useful.
I think just the general advice is like just be friendly. Like I guess a lot of CS majors were pretty introverted, right? Like I think like if you're not a dick, like you meet lots of people, you just never know, right? Like someone might refer you to something. So that's kind of the general sense. Like be a good guy.
That's funny. You can only if you see the number of people on YouTube versus in person. I think we would we would agree about the introverted part. So, but thank you all for being here, either on YouTube or live. Okay, next, this is a good one too. What is the easiest way to use the quote unquote backdoor approach to bypass traditional hiring processes and secure a job/interview?
The simplest answer, your dad's the CEO. That's the way to bypass it. Okay. In all seriousness, it's nearly impossible for you to backdoor, in the sense, the traditional hiring process unless you have an extremely good reason to. For smaller companies, that can sometimes work in the sense that if you have a referral, they may fast track the interview process to get you something, or maybe not even do the interview process at all. But for big companies, especially, they tend to have very precise systems in place for how they interview candidates. So I wouldn't count on your ability to try and backdoor any of their process. In fact, I wouldn't count on you being able to do it in general, simply because there are very specific circumstances you need to have. Like, grind for the interview. I know it's frustrating, especially for companies that have like 7 rounds, but ultimately it's just something we've got to grind out sometimes.
I would actually disagree with that in that there is kind of a way to kind of, this is low-key a pro tip, but there is kind of a way to backdoor getting an interview in the first place, which is just emailing recruiters directly. You don't want your resume to kind of be lost in the stream of resumes. And this isn't something that I've done personally, but I know a lot of my friends and kind of acquaintances have done and it's worked well for them. They just will literally just send recruiters emails with their resume. And this usually works the best if you have previous experience. If you don't have previous experience at all, I would say like you can still try this approach. It might not be the most effective, but if you have previous experience, definitely just like write recruiters emails, and lots of times it will get you a lot more responses or a response rate that is much higher than just shooting it in the dark.
Very cool. Next question. what are some effective time management and motivation strategies you use to balance projects, networking, GPA, leak code, applications, and extracurriculars? That is a lot, indeed. Yeah, if any of the panelists have some tips with regards to that.
I guess if I had to rank these, let me see. Projects working. I guess the code probably has to be up there because it's quite relevant. Networking for me is pretty big. I try to meet people and like talk to them. Projects I think only sort of relevant when you first start. I did a lot of projects at the start, but once I got an internship, I kind of slowed down on those. Extra quicks I don't have any, so I don't I don't know what that means. GPA again, I don't have a good GPA. Yeah. Oh, applications. That I'm very particular. I've never applied. I did more than like 50 jobs in any cycle. So I'm quite particular. I do spend a lot of time. Like this summer cycle, every application I probably spent like 3 to 5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for projects, it's honestly really difficult to estimate how long a project is going to take. So I would say unless you have absolute, like the more internships you have, the less ROI doing a project has in the first place with respect to your resume value. So I would say try to prioritize things like applying to jobs, networking. If you care about grad school, GPA as well, maybe, but I'm not sure how many people actually care about that. For applications, a really interesting hack that I thought of to do that is if you're like me and don't pay attention in a lot of the lectures you have and scroll on your phone, you can go on your computer during the lecture and just spam applications while you're doing it. It's not super good advice if it's for a class where you actually need to pay attention in the class, like something like an intense math or CS course. But if it's for something that you would either consider a GPA booster or where you don't really care about the grade, I would say spammy applications do something like the Curve repo, which I mentioned earlier. Simplify Jobs has a good job autofiller. TCN posts jobs as well. Like it's relatively straightforward to scam job applications if you know where to look.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something that is super personal. Like for me, what I did and what I continue to do, which is not something that I recommend to all people, but I just skip all my lectures. Like I just don't find them useful. Yeah, I like again, this is something that if you know that you don't think lectures are the best for you, then why even attend in the first place? Like there's no point. Just self-study and you can kind of get that time back. But that's something that depends from person to person. In general, I feel like there's a lot of rhetoric around just grinding 24/7 when I don't think there's obviously a need and a time in which you need to grind, but honestly, I don't think you need to grind maybe more than 2 months of the year. Like the rest of the year, I think that people are so kind of worried about grinding all the time when that can just put you in a negative headspace. You really just need time to relax once in a while and it'll just make you perform better. So just take time for yourself. Like you don't need to, it's not all or nothing. Yeah, I think that a lot of people lean towards doing too much. And I think it's better to kind of slow that down a little bit.
We are getting a message from UBC. We're basically never welcome back again for all the shade we're throwing at school. So, but yes, I do share that. I don't even know what my GPA is, to be honest. So.
By far the most important piece of advice I can give, please get your sleep. Don't do the typical student thing where you're like, oh, I got 4 hours of sleep last night. That's totally fine. Please try and get as much sleep as you can because the less sleep you get, the less productive you are able to be. And not only that, but it's just healthy for regular bodily function and physical and mental health for you to get sleep. So please do not neglect them.
Good advice. Thank you for that. Cool. Next question. This one is from Kat again. Thank you for your second question here. What's your, I guess maybe your third question. What's your pro tip to level up during internships, like coffee chats or turning documentation? Is there anything you regret not doing in past internships? It's kind of 3 questions in one, I guess. Or
For leveling up while doing internships, I would say to ask as many questions as possible from not just the people who are supervising you, but if they have time, the other people in your company, maybe especially on your specific team. Like what I did when I was at Google was I had coffee chats with people. Like I think I had like 7 coffee chats with like senior plus engineers where I would just say, how do I be the best intern that I can be? How do I show initiative to my intern host? That sort of thing. If the company culture is good, people are very, very willing to help newbies who are starting out. So I would say reach out to as many people as you can within your company. For documentation, I'd say that's your best friend. If you really want to show initiative, I would say to try and onboard yourself as much as possible. At the same time, however, I would encourage you to ask questions from people if you're not sure about things. I found that some people fall into the trap of, I want to seem like I know everything and I'm like super smart. But the thing is, oftentimes, like, if you have a question, chances are a lot of other previous interns have had questions like that before and they know how to handle it. Like, you're an intern, it's okay if you mess up sometimes. Like, they're not expecting you to be perfect by any means. As for things I regret, I would say is not asking more people, ironically, even though I asked a lot of people, like trying to take as much initiative as you possibly can with the projects you complete, as well as I would say try to find systems in place that make you the most productive rather than just vibing the whole thing through. Uh,
thank you. Next question. I think we may have talked a little bit about leak code already, but yeah, I guess if you guys remember, how many leak code questions did you do? And if applicable, leak code contest meeting. Actually, not sure what that is.
I can go. This one's pretty easy. I did 75 before this summer. It was the blind 75. I did it 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And then when meta came, they had like a meta tag list, so I did the first 100. So I think all in all about like 150 to 200 ish. But yeah, mostly in the blind 75. I felt like that taught me mostly everything. And then everything else was just kind of pattern recognition by that point.
for me, up to date, it's like almost 500, but that's only because like I make an effort to like do the leak code daily. I'd say doing the leak code daily is an excellent way for you to increase the amount of leak code questions you do and keep yourself consistent and sharp with respect to refining your skills. At the same time, though, doing more leak code questions doesn't necessarily improve your skills, especially if when you're unsure about a problem, you just look at the solution and or give up on it. I'd say a very good approach is struggle through the problem first. If you still have ideas on how to solve it, keep going. Otherwise, if it's taking like over an hour for you to solve something, or if you're really not sure, look at the solution iteratively where you like read a little bit, try and solve it again, read it a little bit more, try and solve it again. Where in the sense you try and give yourself more and more hints until you've either read through the whole thing or have solved the leak code question by yourself. This forces you to think about what sort of information the hint is giving you and also enhances the learning experience so that when you see a question similar to that next time, it makes it where it's faster for you to solve it. I will acknowledge that grinding leak code is to an extent necessary with respect to like just grinding out questions because there's some questions like maximum subarray sum where if you haven't seen the problem before, it's not super trivial to get the answer right away, especially if you don't know the technique that they specifically use. And that factors into like leak code interviews are often luck based on like the question you specifically get.
Yeah, in terms of the number of leak code questions I've done, I would say that I did maybe around 300 to 350. But I did this all within the span of like my first cycle, and then every year since then, whenever I apply, I just spend like maybe 2 weeks brushing up on LeetCode, and that's it. I think as long as you learn it well, like you don't really need to. I don't know. You just need to refresh around the topics. You don't need to relearn everything from scratch. So it's something that you go through the pain once, and then after that, everything is good.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers. LeetCode is unfortunately one of the things we have to do. Let's see. Now, these questions are kind of all around 2 votes. If you guys have specific ones here that you want answered, definitely vote. Otherwise, I'll just pick a few of these, I guess, that we haven't done yet. Okay, let's look at this one. For software/quant roles, what would you do for that? As a
Yeah, okay, so I think for this, I kind of want to continue on what I was talking about earlier about the separation of roles within quant. So I think that it's kind of a stereotype that everyone in quant needs to like know a lot of math, which is not the case. I think that for quant devs in particular, you just need to know how to be a good software engineer, which is different from being just simply good at math, even though they might help each other. I think that if you were going to try to recruit for quant trading, or quant research, then you definitely need to kind of learn math and probability in particular. There's a lot of resources out there online if you're interested in those two in particular. The preparation for that is very dissimilar from the preparation for quant dev. So I would say that if you want to try to gun for all of the quant roles, that is not possible. You should just try to focus on one type. Yeah, but for quant dev, you don't really need any math knowledge.
For software engineering, as far as I know, you don't really need much math beyond like basic high school arithmetic, maybe some pre-calculus. Like if the role specifically asks for something that's more math heavy, like I know machine learning interviews often ask you questions about stats, linear algebra, maybe how automatic differentiation works. So unless it's a domain-specific role that has a lot of math, like ML, computer graphics, etc., then knowing like the basic stuff you would know from just using a programming language is probably fine.
Awesome. Thank you. Glad to hear math is not necessarily required. It's good news for me. Okay, next one. What did you guys do during your first year of university that has helped you so far?
What I did during my first year of university is I reached out to as many people as I could for help on how to apply to jobs, how to write a good resume, how to make good personal projects. What I think by far helped me the most in first year is I took this research course. I'm actually a transfer student, so it was at a previous uni. So unfortunately, it's not something you guys can do if you're at UBC. So from that research course, I essentially asked the prof, hey, do you have any openings for the summer? I'm looking for an internship. They're like, yeah, we have this opening. That ended up turning into my first sort of quasi-internship, like what Carolyn was mentioning earlier. And I think that's the primary reason why I got an interview invite for STEP in the first place. So if you can, I would say try and reach out to profs for doing on-campus jobs that are related to SWE in some way. It helps more than you would think, especially if you don't have anything else. Like, I know another guy who did cryptography research under a prof, and he ended up getting an interview at LinkedIn because of that research, working on the cryptography. So 100% recommend reaching out to profs, reaching out to other people as
So for me, for my first year, I actually wanted to do international relations and go to law school. So I decided during my first year to switch to CS. So I guess that helped me. Yeah, but no, for my first year, I was kind of just chill. Like I just went to class. I didn't really care about internships or prepping or doing any of that. I mostly just tried to, I don't know, recover from high school burnout, which is probably a thing. And yeah, I think you just don't like. I think a lot of people worry over things you can't control, and a lot of times you can just do the best preparation you can, and everything other than that like the information's out there. If you want to prep during your first year, you can. If you don't want to, like you can still get good places. Like look at me and where I am now. And this was all in the span of a couple of years. So yeah, I think that it's like it's really no rush. You can just prep if you want. Don't prep if you don't want. Don't worry too much.
Yeah, I didn't have a first year. I mean, BCS you start at third year. So I was 25 before I came here. I guess the biggest thing for me that helped me was planning it. Like this might not be relevant for most of the folks here, but like as a second degree person, I think it's more risky in the way that like you should really plan out what you're gonna do. So I knew I wanted to give Big Tech a shot. I wanted to know that like like it'll be up to me to decide whether or not I want to stay in there. So I want to get in. So in order to do that, like I had to really carefully plan out like what I'm gonna do in these 2 years. And since like in BCS you only get like 2 years versus the standard like 4, I think that planning portion is definitely like more important. I think like for a lot of BCS folks, they go in without kind of a plan, and then like next thing you know, 2 years pass by and you have no experience, right? So yeah, definitely I think for the BCS folks, plan out ahead of time what you're gonna do, and then start working towards that goal.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice from our panels. Thank you for that. Hopefully that helps budding first years and folks just starting out. Next question. This one's a bit specific, but Anonymous asks, what should I do to get SWE interviews if my 2 data science, machine learning, and NLP internships aren't helping? I have SWE projects and have only put SWE stuff for my data science internships.
So I have one of a couple possible hunches for this. My first hunch would be that your resume isn't written super well. So I would advise you to go to resume review events, go onto TCN as well as other places for like how to improve your resume. Another possibility, which is less in your control, is that maybe there isn't that much SWE stuff you did in a data science ML internship. I know for especially some research roles that there isn't too much on the SWE side compared to an actual full SWE internship. So I would advise you, if possible, to go get your resume reviewed, see especially what people who have done data science and machine learning can give to you as advice, because it seems very strange to me that someone with 2 internships would be having trouble getting interviews. Definitely seek advice from people that are super willing to help for this.
Yeah, thanks for the TCN plug there. I will say on the very YouTube channel you are on now, we do have live resume reviews. You can actually submit your resume to get reviewed by Leo, who was mentioned by Benny as one of his mentors, and he's very good at reviewing resumes. So, sorry about the Anyways, okay, cool. Thank you for that. This is a good one. From Kat, can you discuss your preparation for big interviews, super days? How much time did you spend preparing, and how did you manage your stress?
I kind of want to go big picture again. I think like me getting into FANG, I want to say it was a 2-year process. But for like Meta in particular, I think there was 3 straight months of probably like a couple hours a day. Because like for their interview, it's about like 35 minutes, and it was like 2 lead codes. So, like I knew I had to be really fast. I wanted to get myself to a point where I could solve like a medium in 10 minutes. So I studied off that tag list a lot, which then like made me being able to solve questions super fast. So I think the last couple months was like a lot of that. But in terms of like prepping, like I said, I've been doing lead code ever since I got into BCS. So how did you manage stress? just trying to have some off time. Obviously, like I said, just a couple hours a day, not too crazy. Try not to burn out. Like don't do like maybe like 10 hours a day for like months alone. I think you'll burn out like that. So have your hangout time with your friends. If you have a partner, like hang out with them. Things like that to manage stress.
So echoing a lot of what Benny said, a lot of the preparation happens over a very, very long time period of like gradually doing the code or system design or whatever other preparation, knowing specific patterns and developing that intuition for if you see a certain type of problem, like, okay, here's the sort of tool in my toolbox for how to solve this particular problem. I'm not exactly sure what a super day is. Oh, so like a multiple round on-site interview. Yeah, okay. I've never done something like this, so maybe someone who's done an on-site interview can comment better on this. I think JS has an on-site thing. For time spent preparing, like again, preparing over the long term is very important. When you get the actual interview invite, usually you have like 1 to 2 weeks before the interview happens. So grinding the mock online assessments and lead code is in particular what helped me a lot for grinding the step interview. For managing stress, I know this is very common advice and people are like, oh, everyone does this, but taking a deep breath 5 minutes before the interview is surprisingly helpful. Stress and being able to explain your solution is one of the biggest factors for whether you succeed in the interview or not. Like, I'd say it is almost as important as getting the question correct in the technical sense. They're not just trying to see, oh, can I like output some solution to a leak code hard in 2 minutes? They're trying to see you communicate that solution and your thought process to them. So, because ultimately they're trying to see how you collaborate as a software engineer with other people.
Yeah, so I think I'll break it down as kind of the others were mentioning. The very first summer where I did it, I tried to get my leak code down to where I could do a medium in around 15 minutes, kind of like Benny, 10 to 15. Every cycle since then, I just brush up on leak code maybe like a couple weeks before the season starts, try to get my leak code down to the same minute time, so medium and 10, and then after that, I'm kind of set. Preparation for big interviews and super days, I think that like for super days in particular, it's basically just kind of the same as a big interview. Like they're the same thing, really. It's not like that different, the preparation. Maybe the couple days before, I'll do a couple refresher leak code questions. And then in terms of stress, I think that you just need to look at the bigger picture. As cheesy as it sounds, like it's not a big deal if you do badly in one interview, even if you can't get a lot of responses, or even if like maybe that's your only interview that cycle. Just kind of look at the bigger picture, right? Like there's a lot of other people out there who have it a lot worse than we do. And I think specifically like talking to a lot of friends who are not in CS really helped me with this. Specifically, I have a lot of friends who are kind of going through the pre-med grind, which is such a grind and almost like comparable in difficulty or even worse than the CS grind, I would say. So seeing that other people are really grinding too, like I'm not alone in this. It's not a big deal if I get it or not. Like it's really not the end of the world. Really helped me. And then the last thing, as Ario kind of mentioned, I'm speaking really quickly because I want to kind of get a lot of information out there. Like the interviewer really wants to see you succeed. It's not like they want to see you fail. It's not like the interviewer, after the interview's done, goes to their coworkers and like, wow, like this interviewer just really, they were so bad and it was so amusing for me to watch them do terribly. Like they don't say that. They really want you to do well. So asking them questions at every stage. If you're unsure about something, you can just ask them a question. Like that's normal. They're not going to penalize you, or if they're not going to penalize you that much, considering if it's a valid question, which probably will be. So yeah, remember it's more of a conversation than an actual. You just kind of like code by yourself for 30 minutes.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice there. I guess just. Yeah, I guess next question. By the way, we have about 10 minutes left. So maybe just a few more questions. So for the folks who are really wanting to get some of these answers, make sure you upload these because we probably only have a few questions left before we're probably kicked out of this room. So Yeah, next question is, we kind of talked about this already, but if there's any other insights on whether or not you guys cold applied to these jobs, and is cold applying to jobs online even worth it? I think maybe, yeah.
I cold applied to STEP, and yeah, I would say like cold applying is maybe worth it if you have nothing else. And I would say like cold apply whenever you can. At the same time, it's becoming more and more of an uphill battle to actually get something when you cold apply, unless your resume is super stat, you can communicate what you did super well, et cetera, et cetera. And even then, there's a good degree of luck in actually getting the interview with ATS, et cetera. So networking as much as you can, as Carolyn mentioned, try to directly contact recruiters either through LinkedIn or through email, sending your resume and being like, I think I'd be a good fit for so-and-so team or posting that has been listed. Can you see my resume and see if I'd be a good fit for this? Yeah, like cold applying, ultimately, I would incorporate at least some degree of cold applying into your process, especially if you don't have any much experience or any at all. But networking is definitely something I'd recommend as a supplement to that.
Yeah, I think number one, if you have experience in cold applying, definitely worth it. If you don't have experience, try to set up one of those, like just something for the summer, whether that be research, like a different job. Just try to set up something first. And oftentimes, research is almost like a lot easier to get than, because it's unpaid. Assuming it's unpaid, it's a lot easier to get than an internship. So try to set up some kind of research opportunity first, or like what I was saying earlier, one of those clubs. Then after that, start cold applying. So, but just make sure you have something lined up.
Yeah, next question comes from Sean. This was actually asked a few times, so I will get this in. What's better to prioritize, projects or GPA? I feel like we said neither, but let's have some insights on that.
This highly depends on a lot of things, which is kind of a non-answer, but at the same time, it's true. I would say if you want to keep something like grad school open, or if you want to apply to specific companies that care about GPA, try to keep your GPA as high as you possibly can. If you don't care about either of those, then I'd say projects beyond like, make sure you're not like failing anything or getting like a GPA of under 2, because I would assume they'd see that as not good. But it's fine if your GPA is like a 4 versus like a 3.5. It doesn't really make that big of a difference for most companies. Like projects, not just, as I stated before, like way back when, they're not just for putting something on your resume. They're also to develop your skills and make you a better software engineer. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Awesome. We're going to do one more question, and then I have a final question for the panelists. So one more question from this set of SLIDs. I think we talked about a lot of, I had one in mind.
Can I do a quick one to the second one below? Like,
Which one? Yeah, go for it.
I'd say I can't exactly determine, but I will say that I don't think it's really worth your time to try and ascertain how much luck is involved with getting an interview or getting a job, because there's nothing really you can control with luck by definition. I'd say try to focus on things that are within your control, like writing lead code, grinding system design, or other types of questions companies may ask, refining your resume, doing projects, etc.
Cool. This will be the last question from Slidu here from Anonymous. How do you customize your resumes for a specific application? Could you elaborate on your process? Or do you even customize your resume?
Yeah, so I do. Like, I guess the easiest would be like, say you're applying to AWS. You should probably mention you have AWS, right? And maybe put that as the most important skill, like maybe to the very left, so the recruiters can kind of see it. And like if you have multiple projects, again, right? Like if you did Azure or something, you should probably use that project from Microsoft. Um, yeah, and in terms like some of them have questions, right? Wait, sorry, this is for customizing resumes. Yeah, so I think that's number one. Like I usually just like to like for a company I'm applying to, if I have like 10 skills, but like this skill is like most relevant to that company, I'll put it. I'll kind of like rename it, and then maybe I'll rename some bullets as well for some of my past internships because I have like more than like 4 or 5. And I usually have around like 8 to 9 for every internship, and I'll kind of just do swap out depending on.
I would say as a preface that customizing your resumes for specific companies isn't really worth it if you're just starting out and want to get your first internship. If it's something like research at under a prof or at your school, then that's a different story. But ultimately, getting your first internship is largely a numbers game with respect to how many applications you can spam. So it's not entirely realistic from a time standpoint to just customize it for like 300 job applications. That's going to take a huge. With that being said, if you're gunning for very specific companies and or very specific roles, then I can definitely see it being worth it. Like I'd say look at the job description, look at, okay, what sorts of skills do you need experience in? If there's like, if they want experience in AWS, oh, I put an AWS project on my resume for this because that's what they're asking for. If they have a cover letter and you really want them, I'd say write the cover letter, mention how you are a good fit for this position because of X, Y, and Z. And like, I would essentially look at whatever posting or position you're trying to apply for and like basically give them as many reasons as you possibly can to hire you.
Yeah, I did not customize my resume, and I just think it just takes too much time for me, and I'm lazy, so we're great.
Nice. I love it. Cool. That's it for the Slido questions. I'm gonna ask one last question from the panelists to kind of close things out. I hope folks have enjoyed and gotten a lot of insights. Even I have learned a lot, I think, from this conversation. So the final question that I'll ask, I guess, is sort of if you had one last piece of advice. I know we said a lot of things today, but if you had one sort of last closing thoughts, and I guess we can start with Ario, and then Carolyn can have the last word. If you had one piece of advice to give to the many folks on the stream and also in person, what would that be?
Above everything else, be kind to yourself. Like, this is a stressful process. Like, getting into CS is a grind. Like, being kind to yourself, making sure that you prioritize your physical and mental health is like absolutely a must. And if you are passionate about CS, I am confident that you will eventually make it. Like, passion is something that will get you very far. So if you're in a bit of a tough spot right now, I can understand you. I was in that position once. Keep going. It will get better if you put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, this is gonna be kind of cheesy, but like one of the books that I read is like it's called like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I've learned so much from that book. Like one of them is like sharpen the axe, and the other one's like begin with an end in mind, right? So, I think I reiterated today is like you should plan out what you're trying to do, right? Like I didn't get here because like, I planned this last minute. I felt like it was a byproduct of like all the plannings that I did every step of the way. So like you guys might see me right now as like someone like who cracked, whatever company. But, like just know that this is a very lengthy process, and like if you want something bad enough, you will get there, and you shouldn't be let down. And you should always like broaden your time horizon, right? Like maybe I didn't get the job I want this cycle, but I know that eventually, if I keep trying at it, I will reach it.
Yeah, I think that my only piece of advice is to really just focus on yourself. I think that there's a lot of comparisons out there, or a lot of possible comparisons that you can make, but everyone is so different, and everyone's kind of internship experience is different, and everyone's strengths are different, that you can't really compare. It's not a one-to-one, and it's unfair to yourself to compare yourself to other people as though it was one-to-one. And it's just going to detract on your mental health at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, just kind of focus on things you can control and things that are like you can affect, which is just how much you prepare, what you apply for, how you spend your time. Everything else, just don't necessarily care or worry about what other people are doing, because the chips will fall where they fall. So
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, panelists. With that, we can end it there. Couldn't have ended it better myself. So thank you everyone for joining us on the stream. Thank you everyone for coming live and sticking by, I guess, on a very rainy day. But yeah, I guess recording will be available probably shortly after this, because I end our stream here. But unfortunately, we didn't get to every question. We may get to some of them after, but if not, you can ask away on the server. Someone might answer your question. So, but yeah, thank you panelists, especially. Thanks everyone for coming. Ooh. That was awesome.